have anything in place that when we know it's going to be that cold that would possibly help the mains from breaking? Do we do anything different, or is it just kind of?
I don't really think there's a lot we can do except just prepare our underground crews and prepare our phone center and others to be ready to respond when it happens.
So it's outside of our pipe and our scope. It's actually, is it the ground?
Weather driven.
Okay. So cutting on the water like they tell us to, and turning up the temperature.
No.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. So there's nothing that we can do there.
No. I mean, the water's continually moving in our system all the time.
So it
doesn't freeze like it does in your home.
Thanks, Julie. Mark, we appreciate it. Next.
Commissioners, you know we've had a balance pay program for years that help customers balance their pay and meet their monthly cash flows. Don Mostede is going to describe to you a new program that we're going to offer to our customers that we think will provide them more benefit in managing their monthly cash flow on bills.
Commissioners, with the levelized billing plan, which is what we're proposing would replace our balance pay program, the customer's average monthly bill would be calculated using a 12-month rolling average. And I have some charts here in a moment that really illustrate how this smooths the monthly payments. The payments do vary minimally from month to month. The research we've done indicates anywhere from $5 to $25 that there would be a fluctuation. Obviously, that's dependent on the consumption. It avoids the seasonal impacts, obviously, just like our balance pay program that currently exists intends to do. And the main thing, it's a budgeting tool so that you don't have these huge spikes and swings during the different seasons. So with that, just if I could, and I know many of you are aware of how the balance pay program works. We have had that program around 30 years, and we've made minor modifications, but no major changes. And how that works, it is a budgeting tool as well. And in spring and fall, we do a semi-annual review and we adjust. So basically, the customer who's on balance pay, and we have around 30,000 of our roughly 220,000 customers on balance pay, they're locked in for a 6-month period, paying the exact same amount. Then it's recalculated, and they either go up or down for the next 6 months, and they pay the same amount. And this worked really well when we particularly had the mild winters we've had. But the last few years, as you know, we're getting into more traditional patterns, and we're seeing those spikes. And we've noticed our participation is declining with this program. We were at a high of around 41,000 in 2006. We reached a low in December of 28,000 customers enrolled. Not surprisingly, with the cold temperatures in January, we'd seen an uptick in the last month or so of about 2,000. So right now we have about 30,000 of our customers who utilize the balance pay program. Now, as far as an example, the best way to illustrate this, and we shared this information with our customer focus groups, which we'll talk about in a second, is to use a customer example beginning January 2013 and through the recent months. This particular example, this would be a customer who has multiple utilities and is not on the balance pay program. And you can see, not unexpectedly, that we have the huge swings in January, summer, slight peak, and then kind of off the charts when we have the cold temperatures that we've had the last couple of months. And this is an actual example. So with our current program, as I said, we review twice a year in the spring and in the fall. You can see you're locked in, paying the same exact amount, and then it is recalculated based on your consumption. And you have these huge swings that we've experienced the last couple of years due to the higher actual usage due to the cold temperature. So you're locked in for 6 months. Then in the fall, you reevaluate, and you'll see you have another huge swing. So right now, customers on the balance pay program have been completely insulated from this. So as you can imagine, in the spring, when we recalculate, there's going to be a large swing in their balance pay amount. So with the levelized plan, which is, you can tell, the green line, it's just a smoothing effect. It's not going to be the same amount like BPP is for 6 months you lock in, but it does avoid those dramatic swings. As I said, typically the examples in research we're doing, it's $5 to $25 in that range depending on the consumption. So you're not going to pay the same amount, but you can see that from a budgeting perspective, which is really the intent, it does a nice job of kind of avoiding those extreme fluctuations. Now you may ask, okay, well, if we're going to do a spring review and we kept BPP, how does that compare with the levelized plan? And the dotted line is a projection going forward from March, what we would expect. And you can see it has to make, the balance pay plan will make up this difference in actual consumption. And so you will be locked in paying a significantly higher bill, about $345 for 6 months. When your actual consumption, the blue line, varies. Under the levelized plan, because it's that, again, 12-month rolling average, so you're adding a month, the farthest month drops off, you can see, yes, it will go up, but it absorbs that difference over time in each month. As I mentioned, we had customer focus groups, and we participated in those last month. And the focus group members were folks who had either been on BP and were no longer on the balance pay program, or they were currently on the program. And we asked them, well, what do you like about the program? It's a budgeting tool. I like paying that same amount. And before you show any charts, what don't you like about the program? Well, in the last few years, you really had these swings, and it's harder to budget on that. So we showed them the chart, went through the examples, and there was a slight concern because you will have those month-to-month fluctuations. You don't just lock in on a set amount, but the customer focus group participants basically said the benefits of levelized far outweigh that concern. So they were very favorable, and one of their comments, communicate changes, communicate early, communicate often, and they weren't shy in telling us what format, what tools to use as far as to communicate to our customers. And based on their feedback, we have proposed the following communication plan. The next couple of months, those 30,000 customers I mentioned will receive a postcard, and you can see that in the blue. What they told us is, if you give me a postcard and it's a different color, I'm more inclined to read it. If it's just an insert in the bill, I'm less inclined. So we're going to notify them of the change. There'll be a bill message for the next 2 months. And again, that's based on their feedback that says, if you put it on my bill, I'll read that, and I'll notice that. Also, we have about half of our customers are registered web users. So there'll be information that they can access through that. And we have email addresses for thousands of customers who are on BPP, and we can also use that to let them know this is coming, how this calculation works. And the neat thing is, we will be able, when we transition in the spring, if all goes well, to show them, okay, here would be your BPP amount on the previous program compared to your levelized bill plan amount, which will be lower because, it's based on that 12-month moving average. So our CSRs and our call centers are trained. They were excited about this and believe that basically taking those extreme swings and spreading it out will be a very positive thing for our customers. After we roll it out to our existing BPP customers, we'll begin a broader communication for the remaining KUB customers. We also have a list of those who were on balance pay and are no longer on balance pay for a variety of reasons, so we can target them, tell them about the new program, and really get the word out on what the difference would be. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I understand the benefit to the customers. Is there any benefit to KUB?
Yes.
This program?
Yes, just like the customers have those swings, financially, we have those swings too, and under collecting, over collecting. So this basically smooths out our cash flow as well. So it really benefits, I think, all parties in this case.
Did you hear back from many commercial users versus residential?
Well, residential are the only participants in BPP.
Not
So-
very commercial.
Yeah, so going forward, at least initially, it'll still apply to only residential, and then we'll expand it because we think this will be a popular program for maybe some of our small commercials. Our larger customers tend to want to know the actual consumption and see those fluctuations. And we'll still have that on the bill just like we do now. So you'll be able to see your actual usage.
And on an average, you said it's between $20, $25 or difference opposed
Yeah.
to, okay.
Yeah, usually the, and we're checking everyone right now going through the testing phase. That's been the typical difference. Obviously, if you have the extremes, maybe higher than lower, but we're not seeing anything more than $50 even on the top end. So,
Are you going to promote it?
yes, yes.
And they get the bill, so it'll change every month opposed to it being this and then it changes once.
Exactly, exactly. It
They'll
just,
know that it can fluctuate between, I'm just thinking of people on fixed income, so they'll know it's gonna be between $25 and $50 on
Right.
average.
most are probably less than 25.
Less than that, okay.
And the neat thing is, sometimes with the balance pay program, because it's the same amount for 6 months, it'll mask, say if you have a water leak,
Right.
you know, you're just paying the same amount. This program, you'll be able to kind of see that because it's changing every month, and it'll be more easily identifiable. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
As
Thank
I
you.
said, this is a long board meeting. We have one more presentation, but it's at your pleasure. It was in response to Commissioner Cannell's question last month about the contamination in West Virginia. The question is, what happened in West Virginia, and secondly, what would we do? So if you've got another 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes, we'll address that directly today.
Thank you.
Commissioner, last month, Commissioner Cannell raised the question about the West Virginia chemical spill events were still unfolding. 5 weeks later, the crisis is over in Charleston. There's still some questions that remain. So today I'll be talking about exactly what happened in West Virginia, as well as plans KUB has in place to hopefully mitigate that risk here in our system. Back on January 9th, the residents of Charleston, West Virginia began noticing an unusual sweet smell in the water that some described as smelling like licorice. About the same time, about a mile upstream, there was a chemical storage facility called Freedom Industries. Workers discovered a leaking chemical storage tank at that time. When investigators arrived, they were told that the chemical leaking was methylcyclohexylmethanol, and I will refer to that as MCHM from this point on, now that I've proved that I can say it. At the same time. They were told the investigators originally that about 5,000 gallons had spilled into the river. Turns out it was really closer to 10,000 gallons, and also there was a second chemical involved that wasn't disclosed until about 2 weeks later. This was significant because the Elk River is not that big. At the date and the time and the location of the spill, it was just about 7 feet deep. The Tennessee River is 30 times bigger. So the Elk River, what it moves in a month, the Tennessee River moves in a day. That's significant because there wasn't a whole lot of dilution going on as the contaminant plume moved downstream a mile to the Charleston water plant. The water plant became aware of the contamination about noon that day, but made the decision to continue trying to treat the water, assuming they could filter it out. Later that afternoon, they realized it was breaking through the treatment process, and they notified their state regulator about 5 o'clock that afternoon, and they issued a do not use order to about 300,000 residents of Charleston and the surrounding 9-county area. And they were told not to drink the water, not to bathe in it, wash with it, or cook with it until further notice. That kind of became a major news story that I'm sure you all began to follow, and we began to follow it as well, because as unfortunate as these events are for those who are directly involved, it does provide learning opportunities for other utilities to see how well their emergency response plan would respond to a real-life issue like this. KUB's emergency response plan has 5 elements, and I will only be able to give you a general overview for some of this information. The response plan is a pretty hefty document. This is the vest pocket version right here. And we submit this to the state every year for their review. It's classified as confidential under Tennessee state law, the Terrorism Act, so I'll only be able to go over just summary portions of this with you. The main thing is prevention is easier to do than response. So we like to prevent any type of issues. Monitoring the source water is the best way to do that. And this could be as simple as walking down to the intake structure periodically, as the operators do, and taking a visual look at the water. Are there any unusual colors, odors, debris floating downstream, fish kills, this type of thing. The intake structure itself is designed to mitigate risk as well. The water flows from right to left. As you can see, the intake structure is kind of oriented downstream. That's intentional. For any floating type of contaminants, they would float on by, and the water actually enters the intake structure from the downstream side. In addition, the structure is designed to take water in at different levels. So if there were a floating contaminant like an oil slick that was lighter than water, theoretically KUB would be able to continue pumping the water if it wasn't mixing with the water too much. Once the operator completes their review of the water, they return to the control room. There they have access to a number of monitors, inline monitors that are in place to assess how the water is. They're looking for things that would indicate some type of a change in the source water, pH, turbidity changes, chlorine demand, this type of thing. And we also have a fully equipped laboratory at the plant, in addition to our state-of-the-art facility at Jackson Avenue, where water testing is performed. Each year we perform about 100,000 water quality tests. In addition to monitoring, we do a source water assessment each year. This is where we look at any type of categorical businesses or industries that are located within 1,000 feet of the rivers that provide us our water and the tributaries or the streams that supply those rivers. So it's a pretty lengthy process to do this inventory. We look about 15 miles upstream on the French Broad, the Holston River, Tennessee River, and those streams that supply those rivers. Once we determine what those businesses are, we take an inventory of those. We have contact information with those businesses and industries. I talked about our emergency response plan earlier. It has pertinent information about plant operations. More importantly, it lists all of the specific actions that KUB would take in response to specific emergencies that occur. Those of you who are on the Audit and Finance Committee will remember that as part of the organizational risk plan that we report to you each year, there's some type of an emergency response drill that I report on, or some exercise that's done. This is one of the ways that we exercise what's going on in that plan itself. It's also a great way to train personnel to be able to respond to an emergency. Then finally, there's the coordination and communication element. We also involve the agencies that we would be working with in the event of emergency response in our drills. This would be our direct regulator, the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Division of Water Supply. It could include the Department of Homeland Security, the Health Department, KPD, Emergency Management Agency in Knoxville, Fire Department. All of these agencies we establish relationships with, so if anything were to happen, we know them, they know us, and we have worked together before. Finally, there's public information. We learned as long ago as the blizzard of '93, the importance of getting information out to the public and the media as quickly as possible, and to provide timely updates and consistent information. And frankly, getting back to West Virginia to close, this is where they've run into some problems. They've been criticized for their communication plan. To kind of update you on what's happened since then, Freedom Industries has declared bankruptcy about 8 days after the spill. They have declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which brings into question who's going to take financial responsibility for the damages because of the spill. Investigations are underway, environmental, health, and legal investigations. The first congressional hearing was held on this on February 4th. On the same day, a federal grand jury issued the initial subpoenas on this issue, and there's been proposed legislation by the two senators in West Virginia, Senators Manchin and Rockefeller, as well as Senator Boxer, have come up with some proposed legislation that would put more restrictions on chemical storage facilities and require the states to inspect them more frequently, and also require them to have emergency response plans. The biggest impact has been the loss of public confidence about the safety of the water and the people in Charleston. First of all, there was the steady drumbeat of mixed messages. They found out after the fact that there were 2 chemicals involved instead of 1, that the volume had doubled. But then the mixed messages regarding water safety. At the peak time of the contamination, there was 2 parts per billion, 2 parts per million rather, of MCHM in the water. Kind of put that in perspective, we have about 1 part per million of chlorine. So they had doubled the amount of the contaminant in the water that we would have had chlorine. The first word from the Center for Disease Control was that if they lowered it to 1 part per million, that would be safe. So Charleston flushed the water for several days. On January 13th, they achieved that level of 1 part per million. So the water company removed its do not use order and said everything was good to go. However, the chief health officer for the city of Charleston said just because the water company says it, that doesn't mean it's safe. And for the last month, he's been challenging the safety of the water. So we've got mixed messages coming from public officials in Charleston. To add insult to injury, a couple of days after the do not use order was lifted, the state health department said, in an abundance of caution, pregnant women should only drink bottled water until the contaminant is no longer detected. To add to the confusion, they said that message was coming from the Center for Disease Control, which originally said, 1 part per million is safe. Detection limits are 10 parts per billion, which is 100 times lower than the 1 part per million that they were originally saying. So once again, mixed messages. And now they have elected officials, Senator Rockefeller and the governor, saying that they don't drink the water and they wouldn't drink the water. So the people of Charleston are really confused at this point. Until this safety issue is resolved, it's going to continue to be a national news story. Earlier this week, they had to close down an elementary school in Charleston because the teachers noticed this licorice smell coming from the water again, and CNN picked up on it, NPR also, and so it's going to continue to be a major news story. We'll continue to monitor it as well. But with that, any questions?
Any questions? Thanks, Eddie. We appreciate it.
You can drink the water here, by the way.
Is that it? President's report. Is there any other business from the board, from the public? Okay, if not, then we are adjourned. I'll remind you we'll continue our meeting with a lunch session that's open to the public. We are now adjourned.